Welcome to the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast. Thomas Miller along with Robert Glasscock, and we have this series that is unfolding, and here is where we do cross the 50% mark, at least after this episode is finished, because we are going to talk about Saturn transiting through Pisces, which it is doing here in 2023 and 2024, relative to each sign. So we are talking here about Virgo, the maiden.
Saturn, in relationship to Virgo rising or Virgo sun, Saturn is in the seventh house position in Pisces. And Saturn has 2 more years to go in Pisces. It enters Aries of new beginnings at the end of May of 25. Now, if you think of some thumbnail descriptions for Saturn, 2 of them are pretty essential. One of them is karma, which some people call fate. And the other key word is responsibility, which usually entails work and effort. Things that come without effort are basically gifts. You haven't earned them. You're born with them, or they come to you from beneficial karma and so on, but you haven't worked to earn them. Saturn usually requires work, and in the 7th house position for Virgo suns or Virgo rising, the work has to be focused on relationships. If you go back to Martin Buber, the philosopher who formulates the I-thou construct, the I is your sense of ego and self in the 1st house position. The thou is everybody and everything else that's not you. So all Virgo people, sun or ascendant, are being tested over these next 2 years in how they relate to the world, very particularly in their closest, intimate relationships, people that they are married to, people that they live with, their very closest friends, which are differentiated from friends as conceived in the 11th house. The 11th house is more social friends, but your closest friends are more akin to a 7th house relationship. You share a mutual responsibility for that friendship that you do not in the 11th house. So Saturn in Pisces, if you think of it as karma, which is another word for fate, and you go back to the ancient Sanskrit, which is the origination of the word karma, it simply means results of past actions. That's all it means. It may be past actions in a previous life or lifetimes. It may be the results of past actions yesterday. But that's what the word means. So if you understand karma, you understand that you create your own fate. It is not forced on you from outside entities or outside anybody's, including God. It is your creation. So be responsible for understanding what you're doing, what you are saying, how you're behaving, because in each one of those, you're creating your fate from day to day, especially in how you relate to other people. And another key word, as I mentioned, for Saturn is be responsible. It goes back to the old biblical and even before that axiom, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So Saturn in the 7th house now for Virgo rising, Virgo suns focuses on important relationships. And one of the key understandings of Saturn in Pisces, it is a sign of endings and sacrifice and sorrow and loss. It's also a sign of new beginnings. It's a double sign. You think about the 2 fish in Pisces swimming in opposite directions but tethered together. One of the fish is facing the past, looking backward. The other one is looking forward. And Pisces is a sign associated with death and loss and what is dying and what is being lost is the last 29 and a half years of your life and understanding. You're meant to realize this is a synthesis period where you're bringing together everything that you've done and learned over the past roughly 30 years and letting go of an immature and maybe misunderstanding approach to life in order to embrace the new life that is simultaneously being reborn from all of the experiences you've had in the past. So important relationships in your life, including jobs, including marriages, including loved ones, including family members, all of these important relationships are dying and being reborn in a strange way. And this absolutely can correlate to literal deaths among loved ones in the circle, often through age or through illness. It can also correspond to Virgo people, sun or rising, having to face responsibility for how they have treated other people in their lives. The challenge is on a water level, which is the emotions. Totally irrational, but totally legitimate. Virgo people, rising or sun signs, tend to use their minds to analyze and logically work their way through everything. They can be hypercritical, perfectionists, and so on, expecting too much of themselves or others in terms of perfection. It is also a sign inherently, Virgo is a sort of, I don't want to say a loner sign, but there are aspects of that to it. It has an innate understanding that sacrificing itself to a marriage or to a job or to a church or to a large organization in some ways is very threatening to its own sense of self, so that over time, Virgo rising, Virgo suns may have difficulties in the kind of intimacy that we are all told is the ideal, where you find the love of your life and you remain together 24/7, 365 days a year until death do you part. That's not easy for Virgos, not easy for a lot of people. So that whatever the faults or fate that Virgo rising, Virgo sun has accumulated over the last how many ever years, the chickens will come home to roost. Saturn in Pisces will bring to the forefront any areas of escapism, irresponsibility, evasion, and so on. Pisces is a terrific sign at avoiding facing truths. It can find any number of excuses for not being responsible for how it treats other people. I'm sick. I was drunk. I was on drugs. These are all, and you may be, Pisces often indicates when it's over in the 7th house with Saturn here, dealing with a partner or loved ones who are going through a period in their lives where they may be experiencing health issues, drug or alcohol-related issues, infidelity, those kinds of issues. So it can be a very difficult transit, but the point of it is to face the truth, to get at the truth, just the facts. As the old Dragnet TV series used to say, that's Saturn. Be honest, be real, face the facts, and communicate. Because Saturn in the 7th house, this transit now goes on for another 2 years through May of 25, will often indicate blockages and challenges in communications with other people. Now, one of the best things you can do with this transit, if you're Virgo rising, Virgo sun, is to either enter a service profession or build on one that you've already established. At the minimum, for example, the service professions can include a lot. Armed services is one thing. Service in restaurants are another one. all of the jobs, mechanics, auto repairmen, clerks, all of these are essential jobs to keep the economy running. They're not given a lot of credit, and they're often underpaid. A little higher than that is to enter a service profession like teaching or healthcare fields, where you're giving service to a larger collective. And this is one of the big challenges with transiting Saturn now in Pisces for Virgo people, is to become aware of your own talents and leanings that can potentially serve the larger collective, the community, the town where you live, different groups in that town, disadvantaged people, underprivileged people, poverty-ridden people, people lacking education, and so on. So there are any number of areas, including spirituality and metaphysics and astrology, where Virgo rising, Virgo sun people may be, over the next 2 years, bringing forth a leaning and talent and interest in those things to better serve their communities. And that's really the big focus. Take responsibility for how you treat other people. And the big one with Pisces in the 7th is compassion. If your instinct is to strike back when somebody says something foolish or insulting or hurtful, take a moment to realize that when they behave that way, they're defending themselves against something that's very sensitive to them. And try and figure out, you've got Virgo rising, Virgo sun, you're good at this. Figure out why they're behaving the way they are, even if it hurts you. And understand that they're defending themselves against something that's very sensitive to them, and use your compassion to address that. You know, I realize this is hurting you and you're afraid, and this is why your anger is coming up. Can we talk about really what you're really afraid of and begin to get to the core issues and treat them in a professional sense, seriously, with Saturn? And sometimes you will find Virgo rising, Virgo suns, this becomes an era where they actually begin to either go back to school to get a degree, or they graduate from school and they begin to work in areas of therapeutic and healing kinds of professions. Another wonderful area to concentrate on is spiritual professions, the mind-body-spirit connection. So for Virgo and Virgo rising, great time to become an astrologer, a great time to become a psychologist, a great time to become a nurse or a dentist or any of those service professions, or to even go into a spiritual profession and begin to teach those things, begin to lead a small group and expand on that. So it's a very hopeful sign, but every Virgo sun and Virgo rising over these next 2 years will find they are sacrificing something that they've carried with them now for a long time in order to purify or refine their lives. If you've been smoking weed for the last 30 years or getting drunk every day, great time to get a grip on those kinds of habits, because all of those are evasions of responsibility. So it can be a wonderful aspect, but it will test the viability of every single important relationship in your life. So be willing to look at those honestly. Some of them may be toxic, and you may have to drop them. You may have to leave them behind, even geographically. If you've been, for example, a drug addict for a long time, it's fine to get clean, but it's not enough. You have to be able to get away from the culture and the friendships that became a big part of all of that. So sometimes this can literally mean relocating to get out of a toxic situation like that for your own good. So it's not an easy transit, but it can be fundamental and ultimately incredibly enriching and purifying when you emerge on the other side of it in May of 25, roughly, and begin this new start. You are so much the better for what you have gone through.
Now, that was amazing. What a great walkthrough. I've a couple of thoughts on it. One, Virgo is the opposite sign of Pisces. Does that make more tension, if you will, than perhaps the other signs related to this transit of Saturn?
In a way, yes. Virgo is all about logic, and it's an earth sign. It focuses on materiality, material signs of health and wealth and success and so on. And that can become the framework for the battles, because Pisces has nothing to do with materiality. It has everything to do with emotions and feelings. And Virgo's tendency, because of the it's meant to be critical. You're meant to be critical when you have a lot of Virgo in your chart, to look at things analytically and so on. But that can be the death of emotions, because you can always rationalize your way out of responsibility, which Virgo can be very good at. Virgo on a higher plane is terrific with accepting responsibility, especially when it finds itself going into any of those areas of service to the greater good, the greater community. But Virgo can get hung up on little minute details. You walk into a beautiful room, and all you see is the fly over there on the table. And that's all you find. Miss the beauty of life because of that one little thing. And Virgos are great at this. And Pisces says, get over it. There's always a fly. They have a right to live too. Look at the beauty. Feel the beauty. So Virgo is great at denying its feelings because of its logic and rationality. And that's the big lesson to learn here. So Virgos in relationships, when Saturn's going through the seventh, the partner or loved ones or friends or even employers and so on may be going through crises of their own. And Virgo needs to be sensitive to those things rather than anticipating the worst. Be sensitive to them and carrying it. This is the key, that compassionate key. If you can Virgo has a lot of trouble doing this. But Saturn is a great teacher. If you can momentarily put yourselves in another's shoes for a moment and stop thinking about the fly in the room and look at the beauty in the person and focus on that and focus on helping them heal. This brings out Virgo's best side. They are natural healers. Vocally, verbally, psychologically, spiritually, that's a native gift of Virgos if they stop being so darn critical about themselves. So it can be a confusing period for a couple of years, but the confusion arises from the fact that Virgo rising, Virgo suns are in the process of completely redefining their lives, including their work lives and their relationship lives and their professional and so on. So it's up to them to make that redefinition through Pisces, through being compassionate and purifying themselves, letting go of bad habits, including bad psychological habits. Virgos can be very good at yes, but making excuses. Oh, I know I need to change, but, and then they'll come up with great sounding reasons not to change. Give those up and say, yes, I need to change. How can I do that best? How can I refine my life? And that's the key to, I think, Pisces is refinement on a realistic level, Saturn. So get rid of the garbage in your life, the toxicities in your life. Let those go. Move away from them if you have to. And sometimes that's literally move away, or at least move away in your heart and soul. Purify your life a little bit. I'm not talking about becoming a saint here, but you know what to let go of. Any Virgo does. So be honest with yourself and be honest with others. And if they won't be honest with you, let them go.
I was going to ask you, what's the highest side of Virgo and what's the lowest side? I think you might have just answered the lowest with being too critical. What would be the highest side of Virgo?
The highest side is service. And that can be at any level. You can serve meals at restaurants. You can be a mechanic. You can be a doctor, nurse, or physician. And now you're getting into higher levels. You can be a teacher. And so on. Serve the collective. It's service. Because Virgos all have good minds. And using though, it's also a Mercury rule sign, so often communications, working with the hands, they have scientific, logical minds. They can be in many forms of service, religion and spirituality, or other careers of service. But the idea of Virgo getting out of their safety zone and serving a collective first, making that the first thing. How can I serve more people? What do I know? What do I specialize in? What are my special particular interests that I can develop and educate and train and maybe get a degree in that will help me serve my community, my town, my state, maybe even my country, maybe even the world?
And that's one of the highest callings, and it's going to be a calling in demand, obviously, as the future is ahead of us. Thank you so much, Robert. If you'd like to talk to him about your own chart, maybe you're a Virgo, you'd like to hear what else he might have to say, well, you can get his contact information in the show notes. Kristen Lawhead keeps our monthly moon calendar updated. That's available on the funastrology.com website, and all the links to everything we have going on are in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time on Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast with Robert Glasscock.